We have 3 layers to the heart. We have this superficial layer right here, which would cover the entire heart. This is known as your visceral pericardium, also known as your epicardium. Okay? So this is the visceral pericardium, also known as the epicardium. It's a thin layer, right? Then we have this layer right here, all this muscular layer, all of this muscular layer, okay, all of this. So if I say to you, I put a sticker on any part of this and I say, identify the layer, the answer is going to be myocardium. That's the muscular part of the heart, the myocardium. That's the bulk of what we really consider the heart. It's usually what most people think of when they consider the heart, but again, it's not the only part. We have the visceral pericardium, which is the outer layer. We have the bulk of the heart, the major part of the heart, which is the contractile unit, the myocardium. Then we have an internal lining, which we don't actually see. So if I put a sticker on any part of this and I say, identify the layer, as soon as you hear that word layer, you're now going to call it the endocardium. Remember that from lecture yesterday? We said the layer. So identify the layer, the answer is what? Endocardium. It's on the inside, okay? Now remember, the endocardium is going to line the inside. So any of the blood that you find in here is not just because it's oxygenated. Well, where are we? Actually, I should be in here. In here, in the left ventricle. The blood's just not going to pour out of here and go to these cells that make up the myocardium. They actually have to go out of the heart to supply oxygen here. Why? Because the endocardium basically acts like a little layer that prevents the red blood cells from getting inside and giving the oxygen. Does everybody understand that? So these cells are not getting oxygen from what's in the chamber. And that's usually what people go, oh, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I just figured whatever blood was in there just kind of made its way into the myocardium. It doesn't. It actually, the oxygen actually has to exit outside of the cell, outside of the heart to actually supply these cells. None of the oxygen in here is going into the myocardium itself. Why? Because the endocardium, that layer that you're not seeing, the simple squamous epithelium, is preventing the oxygen from getting through. It's kind of like lining on a pool, right? You have the major frame of a pool, but they have this thin blue layer that lines the inside of the pool. It's like some plastic or whatnot. That's why the water doesn't leak. Does everybody get that? Okay. Now, as I mentioned before, we have this right here. If I say to you, identify this structure. This entire structure is known as the interventricular septum. Meaning between what? Between the ventricles. It is not called intra, because intra means what? Within. Inter means what? Between. So if you write intraventricular septum, that's incorrect. It's not what it's called. It's called interventricular septum. So interventricular septum means it's between the ventricles. This here and this here, or just right here, is going to be called the interatrial septum. If we look on the other side, and I put a sticker right in between, and I say identify the structure, right in between these white structures, and I say identify the structure, the answer is going to be interventricular septum. This is the entire interventricular septum. This structure right here is called the what? Interatrial septum. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, stop.